For a few more moments for the audience to build in, and then we'll start the session. So team, we will be starting the session in a short while, allowing the participants to join in. Okay, team, I guess we should start. So welcome back to the session. Thank you so much for joining in on time. So what I would do is I would reverse the order today. Instead of starting off with your presentations, let us begin by the next steps in terms of our approach, because the next session would be our last session, and I would definitely want to see your final presentations in the next session, which is on 20th. But I would also want you to do is reach out to me, each one of you, on the emails if you want to get feedback on your specific projects. So that is something that I would definitely want all of you to seek. So do seek the inputs. So let me invite all of you to ask me any question that you may have from the previous session. And if there is no question specifically, then I would like to proceed with the next steps in terms of our discussion. So I would give you a minute's time. And in that particular minute, if you have any questions for me, please reach out. Go ahead, team. If there's no question, you please write no on the chat so that I can move on. If there's a question, ask the question on the chat. If there is no question, write no on the chat. Please do that. It's very important that we have that protocol.
Dr. Soni, I have a question. This is
Yes,
Priya
please.
here.
Yes, please.
So it's more generic rather than the ideation piece. And
Mm,
I was actually comparing the agile methodologies, and there was one question that I had, when
mm,
I compare it with Scrum.
mm,
So,
mm,
does design thinking have,
mm,
defined roles like a Scrum Master or a product owner
mm,
or a team, like a development
mm,
team, like how Scrum
mm,
has? Does
mm, mm,
design
mm,
thinking also have some sort of a protocol like that?
It's a good question. So let me first of all invite you to have this view of design thinking and Scrum. It's a very fascinating view, which is I'm just pulling up a presentation. Give me a moment.
Sure.
So this is a very fascinating view which is available to us, which contrasts design thinking with agile. Okay?
Mhm.
And it shows that what is the place where design thinking really brings in a tremendous amount of value, and where can we potentially look at an alternate. So here is a slide. It's a very powerful slide actually. Okay. All right. So I hope you can see the slide now. Yeah.
Yes.
Can you see
Yes.
the slide? Yeah. Okay. Now this is a very interesting work from Gartner, and it presents design thinking in perspective to both agile, which has Scrum, and lean startup. So what it says is that wherever you are dealing with high level of ambiguity in any problem space, okay, in any problem space, when you're dealing with high level of ambiguity, you can start off with design thinking. So design thinking, as you can see on the screen over here, it starts with a goal.
Mhm. Yeah.
Okay, then you empathize with your audience, you define, which you narrow down your space, and then you ideate. Now, once you have done your ideation, you have series of experiments. This is what we'll learn today called prototyping. Each experiment goes through what we call as a build, measure, and learn cycle. So this is an iterative cycle. Now, at the end of each iteration, you can either persevere or you can pivot. That's called the persevering or pivot. Once you have perfected your cycles of ideation and build on those ideas, then you can go into what we call as a agile methodology. In agile, you create a product backlog. So what's a product backlog? A product backlog, for those who are new to agile way of doing things, is nothing but a listing down of all the features that will go into the product. Now, instead of working on all the features and then shipping the product, what agile believes in is called ship and iterate. So you ship a piece of the final product and see how the customer responds to those features instead of making it 100% ready. So you do a sprint planning, execute the sprint. Sprint, as you understand, is a race, and Scrum happens in rugby. So Scrum means all these rugby players come together. That's called Scrum. So
Mhm.
you ship it, then you review the sprint, and this goes through the iterative cycle. So the whole premise is that design thinking always precedes agile and lean. Now, coming to your specific question on the teams, so design thinking per se does not have any such definition of teams in terms of what is more applicable to what kind of a role. Whereas what design thinking believes is in diversity. So if you were to really complement agile, Scrum, design thinking, I would say that when you're in the discovery stage, use design thinking, and when you're in the execution stage, use agile and Scrum. Does it help?
Yes. I also have a follow-up question on that. So, like in
Mm-hmm.
Scrum, you usually have a Scrum Master who ensures that all the protocols are followed, all the guidelines are followed, that people are sticking to what they are supposed to do. Would we have something like that? Like, for example, now if we are in the define phase where we are defining the problem in a team, but say there are some people who are inadvertently, diverting into the solution space. So to get them back to the problem, usually there's a scrum master who oversees all these discussions and guides them that to avoid drifting away from the focus. Does design thinking have something like that?
So design thinking has a moderator. So it's not a scrum master or any leader role that we have defined in design thinking. So it's a moderator, and this moderator typically has a assigned of running the entire program. So he or she is not a part of the team, but some external person who can bring that amount of discipline. So for example, when I do design thinking workshops, I am that moderator. And within the team, everybody is on the same level. There is no hierarchy.
Right.
So it doesn't happen that way. Yeah.
Okay.
So I think the whole focus of design thinking is discovering the problem,
Mhm.
and the whole focus of Scrum is executing the solution. Because execution requires a lot of discipline, and that is where we have these roles defined as a Scrum Master, etc., to bring that level of discipline.
Right. Got it. Thank you so much.
It's a good question, though. Very happy.
Um, Professor,
Hmm.
I have a query. This is
Yes,
Asha here.
yes, Asha.
Yeah. So, sir, once we ideate, we firm up
Hmm.
on all the points. Is
Hmm.
it after that that we move on to Scrum, onto the Agile and Scrum?
Yeah.
And during the Agile phase, if we still generate ideas, is that welcomed, or how is it? Or we freeze it at the design stage itself?
No, it's absolutely okay if we have ideas. That's very much natural, also,
Mhm.
because and that is the whole notion of iteration. So while this particular slide might look slightly incremental, but we can always come back to ideas. That's absolutely fine.
Even at the
And
Agile
some of
stage.
the absolutely fine.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And so when you review the sprint, you might realize that some of the ideas which you had did not work. So to overcome those limitations, you might come up with another set of ideas. And that is where we encourage rapid ideation. The only thing that you do not typically revise is your inspiration. The inspiration has to be sort of pretty well clear at the outset, because if you keep revising the inspiration in the sense that why are we here at the first place, then it means that you're not really given it a thought before going on. So the distinction between the first half of the slide and the second half of the slide is that in the first half we have to think slow, and in the second half we have to think fast. So it's a slow thinking followed by fast thinking kind of a model that you're looking on the screen. But this is a very useful slide, so please take a screenshot. Anyways, I'll email this presentation to you, but this is a useful slide nonetheless.
Thank you, sir.
Any other question, team, for me? This is a good chance to ask questions, by the way. So I would really
Pavan, I
appreciate.
have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Pavan, so I did the I did something different. I went to all the leaders in my organization and I showed them the 5 problems, which problem canvas areas where I wanted their views. So I got some very good feedback from the. I went to, apart from HR and apart from knowledge management leaders, I went also to talent partners. So I went to some new stakeholders, and what was really surprising is while all of them were, empathizing with knowledge management and really, giving very good ideas, when I actually put the idea triggers and I created the chart, right, the table, I couldn't figure out the personas. I mean, I somehow felt that, some very good ideas have come in that table, but when you look at it from a persona side, it's all jumbled up. So I was just wondering if idea triggers have to be done separately for every persona, or what is the right way to do it.
Yeah,
So,
yeah. So that is very common problem, Michael. The thing is that,
oh, okay.
yeah, the thing is the persona is a representation of the customer whose problem you want to solve. So once you start ideating, the ideas have to be related to the problem and not to the persona.
Got it. Okay, then I'm right. Okay, because Many people told me that, can you design a ideation trigger chart for HR? I'm HR. I said, but you interact with leaders, you interact with talent partners, so your ideas have to be inclusive and not exclusive. So I stuck to my I sent you these slides, but I just wanted to clarify, because when I'm presenting this to my leadership, they should also feel that, yeah, it's an organizational problem we are solving and not a person's problem. So that way.
Good. Yeah, absolutely. That's how it. So you're on the right track.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any other question, team? Sure, no worries. Any other question for me? I guess none. So let me jog your memory a bit in terms of where we were last time around. So we discussed about these 5 problem areas. And the reason we always look at 5 problem areas is to ensure that we have covered all the stakeholders, all the personas, all the problem space. I could have reduced it to only one problem, but the challenge with that one problem is that that one problem might look so humongous to you that you might realize that maybe it's really out of your range to solve that particular problem right now. So we take 5 problems which encompasses all the key stakeholders, and it's a good idea to bounce the problems off before you start solving the problem, because what you understand as somebody else's problem need not be that person's problem. The problem can be completely different or much more complex than what you would tend to think of. So I think it's a good idea to go about understanding the problem slightly better and then attacking that particular problem. So bounce off these problems also, and stakeholders have to really buy into the problem before they buy into your solution. Because please remember that if the problem is not important, the solution can never ever be important. And we somehow assume that everybody thinks that the problem that you're working on is the right problem, which is just an assumption, as I said. So it's very important that you iterate on the problem itself. Now, coming on to the ideation methods, these are the 5 methods that I would be delving into. We briefly touched upon the first 2 methods, but since I saw many of you could not manage to make progress on these methods of ideation, I thought it might be a good idea for us to revisit some of these with some examples. So the first one is challenging assumptions. And the premise is that whenever you are trying to solve a problem, you always, or you typically, often unknowingly, you start from your own biases, your own assumptions. For example, for a very long time, one of the core assumptions I had was that a design thinking program has to be in a physical setting. It cannot be done virtually. Okay, that was a big assumption which I had. Another big assumption which I had is when I'm reading a book, I always need a pen. I've always almost felt handicapped when I don't get a pen when I'm trying to read a book. So these were some of the assumptions which were really plaguing me quite substantially, and I realized that maybe that's not the best way to. Just a moment, there is some disturbance. Let me just ensure there is none. Okay, so I was suggesting that many times you start from assumptions, and it is very useful, very important to clarify the assumptions and identify them so that you can address them. For example, like let's look at some of these assumptions. A big assumption in the e-commerce industry was that if someone has to participate in the e-commerce space, the person has to have a credit card or a debit card or some mechanism of online payment. But then what Flipkart did with its cash on delivery application or feature is that it allowed a whole host of customers to participate in this e-commerce bandwagon or a debit card. Similarly, if I look at packaging, a big assumption in the packaging industry is every product needs to have a secondary packaging. Amazon and Flipkart went about secondary packaging, and which is quite wasteful. But then Big Basket did away with the entire secondary packaging. So when you order something from Big Basket, there is no secondary packaging. Whatever you order, it just comes bare. So they come in those, they bring those crates. Delivery boys bring those crates or those bags where they stuff everything, and then they open it on your doorstep and reveal everything to you. So it saves cost, it saves time, obviously saves a lot of effort of yours. Finally, we had this whole notion of passwords, and we knew for a very long time that your passwords have to be protected. You need to know them, nobody else should know them, should be complex enough, etc., etc. You need to remember them at the moment. But then thanks to OTP, one time password, the necessity of having those passwords to be remembered by you has gone away. And the transactions remain pretty much secure because now you have multimodal authentication. So the assumptions of the past have been there because of the realities of the past. In today's world, the realities have changed. So I think some of the assumptions also needs to be questioned. To demonstrate the point, let me roll a video for all of it. It's a brilliant video, very insightful video. And as we go around this video, this is a video on healthcare. I would like you to identify some of the core assumptions that this video has very successfully managed to challenge. So let me roll the video for all of you. And by the end of the video, I'll ask you a few questions.
It's estimated that around 60% of the world's population would benefit from some form of vision correction. In the developed world, this means a visit to the opticians. But worldwide, only about 10% of the population have access to this luxury. So half of the people on Earth need glasses, and they haven't got them. Josh Silver may be about to change this.
Now, I'm an atomic physicist, and I just do things out of curiosity, really. I was sitting having coffee after lunch, and some chap said to me, "Can you make a variable focus lens?" And I said, nah. And then I said, "Oh yeah, hold on a minute. Yeah, you can make a variable focus lens." And here it is. This is my first variable focus lens. And then this is my lens number 2. This one is much better than that one. I want to make a lens that has variable power. So what I do is I pump fluid into the lens. What happens is these plastic surfaces bow out. So I have a lens and the surface curvature of the lens is under my control. The more fluid I put in, the more curved the surfaces get and the stronger the lens gets. Alternatively, I pull the fluid out, the surfaces of the lens curve in, and I get a negative lens. I made this thing, I just held it to my eye and changed the power. I noticed that with this lens, I could accurately correct my myopia. So we then created this thing. I need prescription eyewear, so I'll make myself a pair of glasses. I cover up one of my eyes and I adjust the lens in the other eye until I've got nice sharp focus. Okay. Then I do the same with this eye. Okay, I can now see the camera that's looking at me, both of my eyes, fine. The situation then is that there's roughly half the world, half the people in the world need vision correction today and don't have it. 1 billion, 2 billion, something like that, very large number.
The benefits of this relatively simple technology seem clear, but does it work in practice? A series of trials were conducted in several countries.
What you want to do is to take a group of subjects and get them to make their own eyewear to what they think is their own prescription. And once they'd finished, an optometrist would take the eyewear, test to see what power they'd set, then run a refraction on them and compare the results of a refraction with what they'd set. And that shows that this process works rather well. People can find their refraction with rather good accuracy. This device, although it was essentially created for a trial, is also created to be worn. And so if you want to wear something like this, you typically don't wear it with the adjusters. Having got it set, you then you take a screwdriver and you seal up the screws. Okay, and I will take a pair of scissors, remove these adjusters. There we are. Take them off. And there we are. So in that process, as you saw, it took me maybe of the order of a minute to make the eyewear, and then I remove the adjusters and I've got it's instant eyewear. Our work has demonstrated that the very large majority of people can make eyewear good enough for many of their needs themselves. That isn't the end of the story. I'm not sure that everyone in the world would like to look like this when they wear their eyeglasses.
Yes, team. So was it a useful video, first of all? Did you find this informative to understand application of design thinking? Yes, no?
More informative, it was more inspiring. And for someone like me who wears glasses,
Yeah.
something really nice. Thanks for sharing this. The first
Yeah.
time I'm seeing
So
something.
let us start off by, yeah, no, glad. So let's understand by looking at the assumptions. So what are some of the most fundamental assumptions for those who wear glasses or those who even have seen people wearing glasses, which is pretty much all of us? What are the key assumptions in the optometry industry? Can you identify a few assumptions that were challenged with this particular innovation?
That you have to change your lens every time your power
Very good.
changes. Yeah, I still carry that
Yeah.
assumption, by the way.
Yeah. And as some of you have written, yeah, or that you need a doctor or some expert to know, to let you know what are your glass
True.
number,
Yeah.
power, specialists, optometrists is needed, expensive equipments. Very good. I can see a lot of people typing on the chat here. Let's keep chat as a predominant model of communication so that uh, the responses are curvature is fixed. Good point, Raja. um, and glass has to be solid. But this was a very genius movement by this gentleman who came up with this very radical idea and then brought down the cost of the glasses down phenomenally in doing so. Correct. Now, can anyone remember? Anyone remembers what is his qualification? Yeah, good point, Lavanya. What is his qualification? Anyone remembers from this video? Atomic physicist. Correct, Arun. He's an atomic physicist. So my question to you is that what is an atomic physicist doing in a very sophisticated field of optometry? How is he solving a problem which is not even in his domain? How is he linking the two? Any thoughts around this? Why is he in a position to challenge? Very good, Lavanya. That's another assumption. Curiosity, common sense. What else? Why people within the field of optometry have not come up with this radical idea? Empathy, okay. Any other reason? Baggage, good, Arun. Legacy, fixed mindset, good point, Raja. So the people who are in a given domain are so used to that particular domain that they just cannot see beyond. And that is where some of these ways in which, so I would like you to challenge the most fundamental assumptions. For example, if Michael is working in the space of knowledge management, one of the core assumptions that we have is knowledge can only be shared in a written text, or the person who is sharing the knowledge has to write himself or herself. Not necessarily. Knowledge can be shared in any form. It can be an audio, video, anything. So if I can have a small video bites or a small audio bite of knowledge sharing, that takes away the inertia, etc., etc. So we can really challenge the most fundamental assumptions in your industry and then move on to addressing those. So you list down the assumptions as you know the metrics. So what you do is you list down the assumptions, and then for each assumption you identify that if I challenge that assumption, what idea can I come up with? So this is something that we discussed previously. Moving on to the second model that we have is called the ideation triggers, and we looked at four triggers: eliminate, combine, divide, and automate. So elimination is what Amazon did very successfully when they took out the multi pronged approach or multi-step approach where you have to fill in your address, your billing details, your credit card number, etc., and they store it on the back end, and you have a one-click checkout. So this one-click checkout, which takes away essential steps, increases the speed. Combine is what Ola did, that whenever you're booking a new taxi ride, it has been combined with your previous taxi's feedback. So you never miss out on giving a feedback. Divide is what Big Basket did when they have divided the delivery into smaller slots, which is both convenient for you and it's better for them because they can schedule their deliveries and make it more predictable. And finally, we have automation. And automation is a case where, what has happened is Swiggy has automated the live location of a hunger savior, as they call him or her, where you can direct the person to the last mile. So that is the example of automation. And these are very beautiful tools, by the way. Some of you have applied, couple of you have not given it a shot, but it's a very powerful tool because it really gives you that technique through which you can break the problem down and look at counterintuitive ways of solving the problem. Let me give you another very beautiful example of the application of this particular method in another case of healthcare, because healthcare is a domain which is ripe with possibilities of innovation and the application of design thinking. And this, in fact, was the very famous project that came out of the Stanford Design School, called as the Stanford D School in 2008. And this talks about incubators. All of you know incubators. So they are used to keep premature birth babies warm till they are able to sustain their body temperature on their own. And incubators are very complex devices. The likes of GE, Siemens, Philips are global leaders when it comes to making incubators. But this was a very radical innovation that came out of the Stanford Design School, and it has revolutionized this medical space tremendously. So let me take you through this video. Watch the video carefully, and when you are done watching it, I'll take you back to the trigger of eliminate, divide, combine, and automate, and quiz you on how this trigger was used to solve this particular problem. Okay, so I'm going off the grid for you to watch the video.
As I watch my child sleep, I feel a sense of inner peace. I will do everything to protect him, and I want to always be there to give him unconditional love.
Every day, he teaches me something new, and together, we share many special moments.
But the day my child was born, the only thing I wanted was to help her live.
One of the biggest problems these babies face is staying warm. This is the primary function of an incubator. But traditional incubators cost thousands of dollars and require electricity. Parents in rural areas resort to desperate measures to care for their babies, including tying hot water bottles around the babies, placing them under light bulbs, or holding them over hot coals. The Embrace Infant Warmer is a simple solution to this problem. Embrace consists of 3 parts: a sleeping bag, a heater, and a pouch of phase change material. Once heated, the phase change material is placed into a compartment in the sleeping bag and can maintain a constant temperature of 37 degrees Celsius or 98 degrees Fahrenheit over the next 4 to 6 hours. The product stays warm without electricity. It is safe and intuitive to use, easy to clean, portable, and allows close mother-to-child interaction. Embrace's mission is to give every infant a chance for a healthy life. Every child deserves the opportunity to live, to grow, to dream.
Yes, team. So was it useful, this one? Did you find this particular example of application of design thinking and empathy? This is one of my favorite examples because it has taken such a poignant issue and solved it in such an elegant manner that I'm short of words. Let us go back for a moment and try and understand the application. So can you please apply and write down examples of elimination? What are the things which are sacrosanct to the traditional ways of incubator development and design, which have been eliminated ruthlessly here. Very well said. Very well. So primarily, electricity was a very, very big essential component of the incubator design, which has been completely done away with, and the need of hospitals and the experts. Good point. The next is combine. Can you think of two things which are done separately, usually, which have been combined in this example? Any example of combinatorial play? Yeah, sleeping bag and warmer, or sleeping bag and heat pad. So very good point, Asif. Proximity with mother and the warmth, because usually a mother cannot hug the baby when the baby is in incubator, and the baby needs that body temperature, which a mother can only give. So bag and mom. Good point, Pinani. The next one is divide. So from a safety perspective, something which has been divided either spatially or temporally. Good point, Antara. Yeah. So this pouch it goes out, then it gets heated, and then goes back into the bag. So the heating pad, so which means that the heating and the heat conduction to the baby are never simultaneous. Okay. So when the pouch is getting heated, the baby is not in touch with that pouch. And when the baby is in touch with that pouch, the pouch is not getting heated. So that is a very interesting dimension that they have brought in to never overheat the pouch or expose the baby to excessive heating accidentally. So that's an example of divide. Okay. Finally, automation. Can you identify something which is a neat usage of automation here? No, pouch can be even heated with warm water or anything, Pinani. It doesn't have to be always electricity. Anything that can raise the temperature to 37 degrees centigrade should be fine. Self-heating, more importantly, automation is in what? What is the automation dimension that they have brought in here? There's a very interesting dimension of automation. So there is a thermostat, which means that it always maintains a constant temperature of 37 degrees centigrade for extended hours, which is 4 to 6 hours. That is important. So it doesn't go to 38 or 39, or doesn't fall to 35 or 36. Ordinarily, if you heat anything with uh, with time, the temperature will drop. That is natural. But because it has a memory device, it maintains the constant temperature for X amount of duration, and after that, it is useless. So the constant temperature being maintained is an example of automation. So it never goes beyond 37, it never goes below 37. It only maintains at 37. That's a very unique feature. And as a result, it doesn't have a temperature gauge. To simplify the product, there is no concept of temperature gauge, because many times the women or the household may not have the literacy to ensure that the temperature is at 37, and that might freak them out, that in case the temperature overshoots, etc. So this is the very useful example of the application of design thinking. So when I show these examples to you, you would really be able to understand that how even the most complex problems have been solved elegantly by using design thinking. Let me take you to the third model. Okay. So the second model I've shared that already with you. So you have the problems and you have these 4 triggers. And for each problem, you have to very specifically look at application of the trigger, that what can I eliminate, divide, combine, and automate so that I can solve the problem. and I apply these triggers on my current system or the current ways in which things are done. The third model that we have is called across the value chain. Now, all of you look at this image on the screen and tell me, what do you make out of it? You can write down on the chat, and then I can invite one of you to speak up and explain to all of us. Please go ahead, team. You can. So what do you make out of this particular flow chart or the flow diagram? Go ahead, team. You can write down on the chat. Yeah, good point, Vikram, Chandra. So what is this cycle? Is it a product cycle or the customer life cycle? What is that we are looking on? Columns. What are these columns? Is it a customer's life cycle or a product life cycle? It's a customer life cycle, okay? Not a product life, it's a customer life cycle. And what do we have on the rows? What are the row items? Need for the customer, correct? So when the customer is going through that particular cycle, what are the various needs that the customer has, or what are the objectives that you want to be fulfilled? And then in each of the boxes comes your ideas. Now, can anyone guess, or maybe all of you can, what's the market share Maruti Suzuki enjoys in the four-wheelers market in India? 40? Yeah, 54%. It is as high as 54%. Now, that's a remarkable feat because not many countries have that kind of a dominant player in the automobile industry. And the reason Maruti has managed to secure such a massive share is not only because it has good products, but because of the value offering that Maruti has in terms of the services, in terms of the products that they are giving, the after sales services, the resale value, pre-purchase options, etc., dealership networks, service center networks, etc. So it is not the product, even if what you are paying for is predominantly product, but what you are choosing basis is not the product alone. So your decision of buying something is influenced by a lot of other things than what you are paying money for. Here is another very beautiful example from the healthcare space again, because healthcare, as I said, is a very fertile place for application of design thinking. It's a brilliant case study again from India, where a very complex problem has been solved very elegantly by using end-to-end value stream mapping of a customer. In this case, it is Arvind Eye Hospital or Arvind Eye Care based in Madurai. Has anyone been to Arvind Eye Hospital in Madurai or elsewhere? Okay, Vikram has been. Yeah, so once you see this video, oh, you're from Madurai. Yeah, so I was there 2 years back, Vikram, at Madurai, seeing the Arvind Eye Hospital. I saw two things there, the Meenakshi Temple and Arvind Eye Care, and it is a sight to be held. It's such a brilliant hospital, but moreover, it's such a humbling experience. You know, I know who is working on IoT. Which team is there who's working on IoT? There's a team, I guess, which is working on Internet of Things in our cohort, and they're already using Internet of Things actually in Arvind Eye Care. It's a brilliant case study of using technology along with human intelligence. So let me roll this very beautiful video for all of you to understand how Arvind has gone about. Oh yeah. Can you believe this, Pilanta? that I was at Honeywell when I visited Madurai Arvind Eye Hospital. So I was doing a workshop with Honeywell in Madurai. So Honeywell was my client. So we had around, sorry, Hema. So yeah. So this is where, you know, I had this amazing experience. Okay, lovely. So let me roll the video for all of you, and let's understand how they went about this particular example.
Dr. Govindappa Venkataswamy was 58 when he founded Aravind. When it first started, the hospital had 11 beds. Its mission was the eradication of needless blindness. Today, it is the largest and most productive eye care facility in the world.
See, McDonald's concept is simple. They feel they can train people all over the world, irrespective of different religions, different culture, different all those things, to produce a product in the same way and deliver it in the same manner in hundreds of places.
He kept talking about McDonald's and hamburgers, and none of it made any sense to us. He wanted to create a franchise, a mechanism of delivery of eye care with the efficiency of McDonald's.
There are now 5 Aravind Eye hospitals in South India. They are all self-sustaining, and together they see over 1.4 million patients and perform over 200,000 sight-restoring surgeries each year. 2/3 of its services are free. At Aravind, every patient who can pay covers costs for 2 who cannot. Because of their high numbers, the revenue from paying patients not only covers costs for Aravind's free services, but also generates a surplus that funds all growth and expansion. All the hospitals send medical teams into the villages. Patients requiring surgery are brought back to the base hospital, where they receive food, lodging, treatment, and return transport completely free of charge. Close to 50% of all the patients Aravind treats are sought out and brought back to the hospital through these screening eye camps.
And I don't insist upon that that man must pay me before I do anything for him. I said, give the sight man, let him give whatever he can give. If he cannot afford, doesn't matter, he can give later. So priority is for human welfare.
The paramedical team at Aravind forms the backbone of the system. These young women are recruited from villages around Madurai and are trained in refraction testing, ward and theatre duty, counselling and housekeeping.
They had so much of respect to the patient, and they were willing to do any type of work for the patient. And they were also willing to share with us in the dream of the hospital. That is how our program started. So from 1976 onwards till today, every year we take about 100 girls from the village.
4 highly trained paramedics assist each doctor, thus optimizing the surgeon's time and skill. In this way, a doctor at Aravind averages over 2,000 surgeries a year, against a national average of 220.
Doctors are not paid extra because they are doing more operation. But the other way it helps also. Ours is a teaching institution. The more patients are there, the better the training can be.
We all know ophthalmologists are a premium in this country. We are only 10,000 to 11,000 ophthalmologists for a billion population. So we have to be much more productive to meet the demands of the people. So, and Arvind has pioneered a system that helps us to do high volume work. And I think it's a work in progress. We have reached probably 40-50% of what one could do.
This is the intracular lens production facility which we started in 1992 with support from Seva Foundation in US. This is the intracular lens which we produce here, and this lens serves as a substitute lens once we remove the natural cataract lens from the eye. The early 90s, there were no IOL manufacturers in India. We had to import lenses from the West. That lens was costing around $200. They were not affordable in most developing countries. So we devised our own methods of making lenses up to international standards, and we were able to sell them at about $5 a piece. Today, we manufacture a wide range of ophthalmic products as well, and we are exporting them to over 85 countries around the world.
Supposing I'm able to produce eye care techniques, methods and all those things the same way and make it available in every corner of the world, the problem of blindness is gone.
Okay, team. So this was another demonstration of applying a holistic thinking to address a very pertinent social and a healthcare issue. Did you find this video useful? Yes, no? Okay, now let us try and understand the video from the perspective of across the value chain. So can you give me an end-to-end perspective? You can write down on the chat that apart from the operation, what are the other things that Arvind Eye Care does to the patient, which ensures that they are able to look at the hospital end-to-end, the patient care end-to-end? Yeah, eye check cam, good point, Lavanya. Food and lodging, return travel, paramedical training, affordable, yeah. Yeah, payment is optional. Good point, Anand. So they almost set up those camps at villages because villagers can't come to Madurai. And through telemedicine, they check their vitals. Teaching institution. Good point, Asha. So you see, whenever you have to apply these models, you have to look at the end-to-end value chain. Good point, Arun. 2000 average operation was a 220 as a national average, which is a phenomenal achievement, and it happens because they have applied. Can you also think of some analogy? If you observe the video carefully, there was an analogy which Venkatappa Govindaswamy drew the inspiration from. What was the analogy? McDonald's. Very good. Couple of moments back, Michael had made a very interesting comment. Michael, do you remember what you said about analogy and drawing parallels? Can you just repeat that again on the chat for us? I liked that comment very much. I just got lost in that conversation thread. So he had a very interesting comment that, you know, a lot of interesting ideas come when you look across the domains or you draw parallels from other industries. So it really solve a complex problem that instead of looking at similar industries, you should look at dissimilar industries. Studying other industries. So, and that is what is a theme of the book which I'm reading currently. It's a very beautiful book. The title of the book is Range. If any one of you have read the book, it's called Range by David Epstein. David Epstein Range. It's an amazing book, a very built case that how going forward narrow expertise will be triumphed by a broad understanding of multiple topics. So if you really want to develop creativity and to be a better design thinker, what I would strongly advocate is to broaden your aperture of reading. If you just read fiction, try build non-fiction. I'm averse to reading fiction, but I'm just trying to build my appetite for fiction. But in the non-fiction category, I'm trying to really broaden my range from spirituality to sports to art, craft, science, nature, etc., etc. Similarly, if you can broaden your perspective, it's really going to make you a very, very prolific problem solver. So this is the third technique that we have, and the way you use the technique is across the value chain. So you have the stages of your value chain, and then you list down the various problems. Do you remember the stages which you had in your previous maps? Any map where you identified the stages of a value chain? Do you have any recollection of that? Any map where you identified the stages of the value chain? Correct, customer journey map. Good. The customer journey map you already have. What you need to do is you juxtapose the customer journey map with the 5 problems that you have, which means that at each stage of the journey map, the customer might face one problem or the other. So when you juxtapose the 5 problems with the 5 stages of the customer journey map, you identify 25 opportunities of intervention. Now, obviously, you can't have an idea for all 25 boxes, but to a couple of them, you can have an idea, and that is what is the model all about. So that's our third model. Let me quickly take you through the remaining 2 models before I give you the exact application examples, and then we'll take a break, okay? The last model that we have, the second last model that we have is called as analogous design. Just building on what Michael just said, is drawing insights from other industries. So this is where the analogous design as a concept really works. So what happens in analogous design is that you draw analogies or similarities. For example, if I have to have people working from home in a very positive mood and engage with the employer and colleagues, which of the 4 contexts I can draw insights from working from home, making employees engage better and have more mental and physical balance and endurance when working from home? Can you pick up any of the 4 cases which I can draw inspiration from the screen? Astronaut, yeah. Astronaut would be very interesting, as Priya rightly says. So these astronauts or cosmonauts stay in outer space for days in the end, and they are all by themselves, surrounded by these machines and gadgets. They're away from family, away from earth, away from nature, and still they are able to maintain sanity. How? So we can learn from these astronauts. Similarly, if I have to really work under tremendous amount of time pressure, which of the contexts I can borrow from? The Formula One pit stop, or surgery also. Absolutely, in surgery I'm working under time pressure and the enormous amount of psychological stress of operation theater, because I'm dealing with life after all. So let me give you a very relevant example of the Formula One pit stop. So watch this video very carefully, because it's a very short video and things happen very fast over here. That's the nature of the industry. And then at the end of the video, I'll ask you a question. And you will be really surprised to see that the farther away the context is from your industry, the better is your idea potential. Okay, so don't look at an analogy which is just next to you. So if Infosys has to have better knowledge management, Infosys cannot imitate Wipro or IBM. If Wipro has to have a better knowledge management system, Wipro has to imitate Shell, because Shell is really out of the IT industry space. Or if one of the companies has to have a better employee engagement when people are working from home. Look at academic institutions, how academic institutions go about engaging the employee. So that is what we need to really look at. Go really out of your zone and understand the industries. How do they solve the problems? The basic premise of analogous design is that whatever problem you are trying to solve is being solved by somebody already. All you need to ensure biomimicry, very good point there. All you need to do is to just look outside your domain carefully and pick up some relevant perspectives. Okay, so let me go ahead with this. Okay. Could you see the video? Was it okay? No? Okay, let me replay the video for all of you. Okay, let me do that. I'll replay it because even if it was okay, it was so fast that it is. Let me replay the video for you. All right. I hope the video was okay this time. Otherwise, Chandra, I shared the link of the video to all of you. You can watch the video there. That should also be equally fine. So they actually managed to change all the wheels of the car in the record 2 seconds. 4 wheels changed in 2 seconds. Now let me ask you a question. If I have to improve the customer service function at my organization, what insights can I draw from here? Can you give me a few pointers? If I have to really improve my customer service operation at the organization, what insights can I draw? Role clarity, expertise, grievances redressal. What else? Any specific synchronization practice? Good point, Hema. Respect for each other, stick to your role, trust each other, correct? So standardization, good point, Damodar. Very good point. Standardization, acknowledgement. Who was the leader, by the way, here? Can you explicitly identify the leader in this team? Nobody is a leader. That's the beauty of this team. These are all self-motivated individuals. Which means that if everybody has a clarity of what he or she wants to achieve and the larger objective, then we don't need leaders. We don't need leaders. Often leaders are required to substitute for individuals' deficiency. If people are clear about what they want to achieve and how they will achieve it, then why do we need leaders? Like, do you need a leader to help you take care of your child? Do you think you need a leader to help you take care of your child? You know how to take care of your child because you have a clear objective in your mind and you can do it because you have autonomy. So if you can bring some of these concepts for leadership development, we can also have, suppose let me shift the frame. Can you draw some insights about leadership development or team management from this case study? Purely on leadership development skills. Can you offer me some insights? This is this analogy on leadership development. Think. What comes to your mind? All are equal. Trust. Team empowerment. What else? Clarity of purpose and goal. Very good, Raja. Clarity of communication. End goal should be clear. So I think role clarity and goal clarity, clarity of goal and clarity of role are two very critical things that will then entrust trust and make leader move to bigger objectives. Anand very rightly says authority, trust, clarity of end in mind. Very good point. So this was a fourth model, which is called analogous empathy. Analogous empathy means look really outside your domain and find who has solved the problem the best in the world. For example, Toyota. Many of you know Toyota's famous for one thing. What is Toyota really famous for? What's something that Toyota has really introduced to the world of manufacturing? Quality. Very good. Toyota way of quality, right? And within Toyota way of quality, one of the very important pillars is just in time. Just in time philosophy, where they don't pile up a lot of inventory, correct? Which is same as lean. Kaizen is continuous improvement. Now, just in time means that instead of producing material and then stocking them for the next function on this assembly line, the next function technically pulls the material from the previous function. Okay, so instead of push-based logic, it's a pull-based logic. So that is your just-in-time philosophy. Can anyone, if you take a guess, which industry did Toyota really pick up the philosophy of just-in-time from? It was not an original Toyota innovation. It was borrowed from some other industry, not Ford, not manufacturing, no. Ford didn't do just in time. So Toyota borrowed the concept of assembly line from Ford, but just in time not from Ford, because Ford never did just in time. They just did just in case. Not Motorola, Vikram. McDonald, no. Any other thought? Very good. Who wrote this? Piggly? Who's that? Can you unmute and explain? Piggly Wiggly. Very good. Can you please unmute and explain Piggly Wiggly?
It's a grocery store in US. American.
Very good. Yeah. Very good. So Piggly Wiggly is a grocery store in US, and Kaiichi Ohno, who was the general manager of manufacturing at Toyota, he went about to his US expedition, and he went to the superstore and supermarket, and he saw that these shelves have products stocked there. Now you can't afford the product to be stocked out, otherwise the customer will return. But you can't even overstock because there is a finite carrying capacity that the shelf has. So you have to keep the material in the shelf just in time before it runs out. So he borrowed the same concept to the automobile industry. Oh, it is in the book, Michael. Okay. Which book? It's in which book? Oh, my book. Okay. Yeah. Because I saw this, I myself did not know about this thing. So I was just researching about Toyota, and that's where I stumbled upon this thing. And I thought it's very insightful that, the company borrowed this concept from some unrelated industry. So analogous design or analogous empathy can be very powerful technique provided you are really exposing yourself to multiple industries through your own reading and observation. And the last technique that we have is what we call as design for the extreme. Design for the extreme means that whenever you are trying to design your product or a service, go to the extreme user case, extreme scenario, and then try to back it up from there. That if I have to make my product and service suitable for that extreme customer, what can I do to make it more amicable? For example, vibrations on the phone. The vibration, which is now such a fundamental feature of phones, was actually introduced for the people who are visually impaired. Okay, because they can't, and hearing impaired, so they can use vibration as a tactile sensor and know that the phone is ringing. Now all of us understand the utility of vibration, even if you can very well hear the phone and you can very well see the phone screen. Similarly, the read aloud feature of Microsoft. The read aloud feature of Microsoft was originally meant for people who are visually impaired, those who can read the entire text. But it has become a standard feature of Microsoft today, where you can use the feature to do a proofreading of your entire document. Very powerful feature. Similarly, subtitles. Subtitles were introduced in foreign language movies primarily to address the need of people who are hearing impaired. But when they launched subtitles, the overall viewership of English movies or foreign movies went up radically, which means everybody benefited from it. So, what I want to offer to you is that when you're trying to design a solution for a product, try to conceptualize the most extreme situations. These could be physical, natural situations, or these could be man-made situations. These could be extreme type of customers or extreme type of context that your product or service can get exposed to, and then back it up from there and try and see that if in that extreme situation my idea has to really work, what should the idea contain? Okay, so that is what we call as design for the extreme. So what we do is we list down the problems and then we try to find that in the extreme situation, what kind of an idea can I really think of? So this is the sheet for extreme design. Okay, let me give you examples of the application of these things as we go along. Okay. So I'm sharing the examples from our ongoing project that we had. And then thereafter, I'll take a break. Yeah, thanks, Michael. Inclusion is a very, very important aspect of innovation. Okay, so these are the 5 methods of ideation. So in challenging assumptions, you write down the assumptions and you challenge the assumptions one by one. And while challenging the assumptions, you can think of ideas. The second is ideation triggers, where again the 5 problems you list down on the y-axis. And then the columns give you those triggers: eliminate, divide, combine, and automate. Then you have across the value chain, where the stages of value chain, you pick it up from your customer journey map and the same 5 problems. And each stage, you identify that when the customer is at that particular stage, how do I solve the problem? Analogous design. So I took an example. Look at this. So lack of big picture visibility and relevance of work was an issue. And we discovered that which industry people really get a big picture visibility. And one of the industries is military. So military was the analogy. And what do they do in military which we can learn from are the ideas. Similarly, course content not oriented towards internship. So where do we have a very tight linkage between what is taught and practice, theory and practice? Medicine is the field. So what do they do in medicine? Similarly, the problem we had was missing attention and guidance from the mentor. So where do we have a very tight mentor-mentee relationship? And we realize that Olympic champion is the situation. You see, we are really going completely out of the context and going very far away from our domain to get some really good insight. Similarly, students not investing sufficient to make the most of the internship. Where do students do a lot of self-study? And we realize that in the UPSC preparation, self-study is the name of the game, or student interest not aligned with internship. And we realize that in dramas and theaters, students ensure that they are exhibiting their interest and getting the right opportunities. These are just some of the examples, of course, but you know, you can really look at your own analogies and take those analogies all the way down and see where they'll take you in terms of very high creative ideas. The only thing that you need to ensure is that you're not repeating the ideas. Okay, you're not having the same idea coming in various slides over and over again. Just try to see if you can increase the variety of ideas. And the final method that we have is called design for the extreme. So you see, for each problem statement, we take an extreme situation, such as uh, one of the extreme situation can be the company is closed during the internship of a student. Okay, or nothing in the course is relevant to the internship at all, or the mentor who is mentoring you in the middle of the course, he resigns from the company, or harassment by mentor, or mentor appropriates your hard work and does not give you any credit. So, or maybe the company sort of fires you in middle of the program because of your incompetence or whatever is the reason. So these are some of the extreme things that can happen. And when we start thinking about redressing of such extreme situations, you can come up with very clever ideas, very clever ideas. For example, coronavirus has taught us that work can go on even if you're sitting at home completely. So some of the assumptions that we had for a very long time in terms of work-life balance, working from home, etc., are now really getting addressed with this social experiment, which is coronavirus. You see, and that is where what I'm saying is that instead of you being surprised by situations, you can preempt the situations and make your solution or your idea robust enough that it takes care of such extremities. Okay, so these are the 5 methods which I would like you to work on in this particular week. Now, we are at 15:21. I guess we can take a break, short break. So let's take a 15 minutes break. And once you are back from the break, what I'll take you through is the last stage of the design thinking workshop, which is prototyping of such ideas. So that tomorrow when we are meeting, which is the next Saturday when we are meeting, I would like to see your presentations. I'll review your presentations and give you my critical feedback. We'll have one more meeting, one-on-one meeting, after the next Saturday. So you are free to reach out to me over email or over call till 30th of March. So don't worry if your project is not over till the next weekend, which is quite likely that it is not over. So you still have time to take feedback from me and work on your ideas. So please make the most of that particular opportunity. Okay. So anyone has a question on these 5 methods that we had? So the way you do it is that you number these ideas against each method, and the objective is to reach to roughly 100 ideas so that we can then choose the ideas which we really should go after. So if you have no question, you can type in no on the chat so that we can proceed towards the break. If you have a question, you can ask me a question on any of the methods.
Dr. Pavan, hi, this is Antara.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I have
Yes,
a
please.
question here. So for all these methods of ideation, right, from challenging assumptions to design for the extreme, for every method, do we need to go back to our stakeholders and we need to take their inputs on those particular ideation methods, or how should we go about it?
You need not take their inputs on the ideation methods. You can take their inputs on the shortlisted ideas.
Okay.
That we do in that second stage. Because if you keep going back to them, then they will say that if I'm only giving you the ideas, then what is your contribution?
Right.
So that is the thing. Yeah.
Thank you.
So you do ideation on your own and then go to them with the shortlisted ideas and ask them if it makes sense to them.
Okay. Yeah, got it.
Yeah.
Thank
So Michael, I'll come to this thing about how do you shortlist ideas. I'll come to that because it'll be too much for them to respond to, isn't it? If you keep going back to them over and over again with each ideation method, they might get overwhelmed. They may not give you that much of time. So we need to do our homework before we go to them. Any other question, team?
Pawan, one question regarding this across the value chain. I think
Yes,
this
please.
blue ocean strategy, buyer utility map.
Yes, you're right.
Okay, but it,
Absolutely correct. It comes from blue ocean strategy. Yes.
but this buyer utility map will be this ideation methodology can be used all across for all the projects, or in some cases it may not be required also, or is required.
It is advisable. Yeah, I'm saying that it is advisable because most projects will have a value chain view or a journey view. But in certain projects where there is no concept of a journey, you may have a situation where you may not be able to apply this.
There's a big matrix, 36, say, this one's are cells are there, and then you
No, it doesn't have to be.
6 by 6.
It doesn't have to be such a big matrix. You can even make it 4 by 4. You can make it 4 by 3. It's absolutely okay.
But one more thing.
It doesn't have to be 6 by 6.
Okay. And second part is that going for the challenging the assumptions, then you go for the ideation triggers. That is nothing but scamper. So what happens in this case? Most of the ideas gets repeated in the process. You get ideation triggers.
The whole idea is to not do that. Yeah, all these ideas which we have listed down are unique ideas.
Yes,
So
there
to
will be certain
resist the
things.
temptation of repeating the ideas.
Okay. I think this one will coming, learning from outside industry will help. That is the fourth one, and design for experience. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah. In your final project, you can choose any 3 out of these 5. Okay, team? There is no obligation to do all 5 of them because not all 5 will be applicable. You can do all 5. That's absolutely fine by me. But in your final project, you can choose any 3 out of 5. Is that fine by you? 3 out of 5 methods. I'll share all 5 to you, but you can choose the 3 which are most applicable to you so that you know the relevance. Otherwise, you'll be forced to, and you may not get unique ideas. Cool. Let's take a break now. We take a 15-minute break and we resume the session at 15:40 hours. I hope that is fine by all of you.
Yes.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, team, I guess we can reboot. So if you're all back, can you please acknowledge that so that I can proceed? Okay, let's begin then. Now, here is a question. Suppose you have 100 ideas, and obviously you can't take these 100 ideas forward, and you have to bring those 100 ideas to a manageable size. How would you do that? What approach would you use to reduce the total number of ideas to something which is more manageable? Do you have any thoughts about it? Any thoughts how to do so? Anybody? What would be your approach? FMEA, brainstorming, good. Hema, any other thoughts? Commercially affordable, good. Vikram, what else? Any other thoughts? Feasibility, yes. Very good, Raja. Viability, feasibility, desirability. Very nice. So if you remember, we had this Venn diagram at the start of the workshop. You remember that? That a winning idea has to be desirable to the human being or the customer in question, should be technically feasible, which means you should be able to execute that within time and budget, and business wise it should be viable, which means it either should save good amount of money for you or help you make money. So what we do now is that of all the ideas which you have, you start going through the filter, you start taking those ideas to the filter, and the way you do it is in this table format. So you open up Excel sheet, you write your idea number, idea title, and you score the ideas or rate the idea rather on desirability, feasibility, and viability, and you reduce it to about 1/3 of all the ideas. Okay, and then you have total score. Okay, so this is how you would do it. Now if you have a team of 5 people, then you can individually score and then you can add your scores to these ideas. But if you are all by yourself, it might be useful for you to try doing it with as least bias as possible, or maybe you can involve some other folks also to be able to go ahead and generate the shortlisted ideas. So here's what we did. So on the case study which I had, okay, do you see these highlighted ideas? The highlighted ones in yellow? Yes? You will see those highlighted ideas? These are the shortlisted ideas. Okay. So I go back to my entire list of ideas and then I shortlist the ideas, the ones which are highlighted here, using this desirability, feasibility, and viability metrics. So if I'm in a team setup, I can open an Excel sheet, write all the unique ideas down and give scores. That can be slightly more long drawn process, but nonetheless will reduce your biases. Or if you don't want to do that, then intuitively you can go through each and every idea and score it and see the ideas which really make a cut. Does it make sense to you? And how do you shortlist these ideas? And then once you have done your round of shortlisting, then you take it to your key stakeholders to get their opinion about it. Because if an idea just doesn't seem good to you at all, especially if you are the one who is going to implement the idea, any input from the stakeholder may be futile. You may not be able to utilize stakeholders' time that effectively. I hope that is clear. It's clear to Lavanya. Others, is it clear, team? How do you shortlist the ideas to 1/3? So suppose you have 100 ideas, you reduce it to 30 ideas. That is the approach. It's a very straightforward approach, but it's a very useful approach. Okay. Now I'm teaching you a very, very important concept in design thinking called prototyping. No, Kashmira, you can't do it as a part of ideation. That's not okay. When you are doing ideation, you should not have any bias or judgment. You should generate as many ideas as possible. Only once you have exhausted all the possible ideas, in the second round, you should look into the shortlisting. Because if you start shortlisting ideas, then you would stop generating fresh ideas. Does it make sense, Kashmira? Are you with me on that? Okay, good. So never mix up the idea generation stage and the idea shortlisting stage, because then the quality and quantity, both of them get suffered as a result. Now, once we have done this, so technically what you do is you list down the top ideas against each problem. So if you remember, you had 5 problems. These are the 5 problems you had, just to kind of jog your memory. You remember these 5 problems in your problem canvas? Yes? Against each of the 5 problems, you once again write your shortlisted ideas. Are you all clear till such stage? So you take the ideas through the desirability, viability, feasibility framework, DVF, it's called DVF framework. And once you take them to the DVF framework, you would have roughly about 1/3 ideas left. Now these 1/3 ideas, all of them look pretty similar to you. The next stage for the ideas would be to plot all the ideas into a 2x2 matrix. Okay. There's a very beautiful 2x2 matrix which would further help you get more clarity on your ideas, and this is called the impact time matrix. So what is the impact time matrix? Impact time matrix essentially means that on the x-axis is your time to realization of an idea, whether it takes a shorter time or a longer time for you to see the results of that idea. Some of the ideas may take a long time. Long time means 2 years, 3 years to implement. Some of the ideas may give you results in 1 or 2 quarters. Similarly, look at the size of the impact or the quantum of impact, low versus high. A low quantum of impact would not really be much desirable, but a high quantum of impact might also take time. So all the ideas which you have, the 30 odd ideas or the 1/3 ideas which you have, can be broadly plotted onto these 4 categories. Starters are the ideas which essentially help you get a quick win early in the game. But that's a moderate win, so that's why we call it a starter. A star is an idea that can give you a win, but that's of a substantial amount. So that's their star ideas. They can give you quick results and very high results. Pipeline are the ideas that take a long time, but also give you very good results. And pipe dreams are the ideas that, even though will take a long time, but the desirable results may not be encouraging. So this is how you put the same 30 ideas in a 2x2 matrix. And the moment you will do that, you will get so much of a clarity on the ideas like this. So initially we had all these ideas put up as columns against each problem. Now we forget about the problem and we put these ideas basis the impact that the ideas will produce and the time they will take. So starters will take you around 3 to 6 months to implement. Let's look at some of the starter ideas. Students work in self-managed teams around a target. Week-wise schedule for the entire 2 months of internship program, or documentation of ideas and key learning at the end of the internship, weekly sync-up call with the mentor during internship, self-rating by student and steps to improve, and peer learning through small group. These are all ideas that can be implemented straight away. We don't need a big approval, a big investment. And then there are star ideas, which will take slightly more time, but will give you very, very high results. Pipelines will take even longer time, higher results. And pipe dreams are the ideas that initially look very promising to you, but the moment you start investigating those ideas, they'll start falling apart. Now think about this for a moment. Which of the 2 slides, this is A, where you have listed down the ideas against the problems, and this is B, where you listed down the ideas against the impact the idea has and the time the idea takes. Which is a better representation, A or B, in your view? B, correct? And why B? Any thoughts why B is a better representation? What B does? How does B help you, the representation? Timelines are mentioned. Very good, Asha. What else? It is much more focused because it tells you the impact, it tells you the time it takes. Now I have to start prototyping my ideas. And what I mean by prototyping is seeing if the ideas really work or not. Let me give you a few tips on prototyping. Are you all clear till this stage? How do you generate ideas and how do you shortlist ideas and start presenting those ideas in a 2x2 matrix? Okay, let us go to the ideation prototyping stage. Okay. Now, because we are in a virtual workshop, in a physical workshop, which maybe the next time we are doing a design thinking workshop, it will be a physical workshop because we are almost heading towards a recovery. We might have people coming in. In a physical workshop, we do what we call as a paper prototyping, which means that we use these cutouts as you can see on the screen, post-it notes, chart papers, Lego blocks, clay models, and we sort of really try and do a physical artifact as much as possible. But in a virtual setting, which is what we are in right now, what might be a useful method of doing prototyping is to do a virtual prototyping. And virtual prototyping is what I'll teach you today. It's a very useful technique, virtual prototyping, because you need to know various methods. Some may work, some may not work, but at least you should know, so that when time comes, you should be able to really apply the most useful methods. So what is prototyping and how do you do prototyping? So let me roll a very useful video to all of you. Watch this video and we will have a better discussion.
Design thinking sometimes has the aura of black magic. It's not. In fact, at its core is something every toddler does: building things, prototyping. And great prototyping is fast. Remember the funnel your team's filling with empathy? Well, by the time you're ready to prototype, you've already invested a lot of time and effort. You can't just build one prototype, watch it fail, and decide you didn't learn anything useful. You've got to build many prototypes and work as hard as you can to get something out of the bottom of that funnel. But you don't have an endless supply of money or time. So you need to make many prototypes per unit of time and per unit of money. That's why design thinking relies on rapid prototyping. Everyone on the team can rapid prototype. A web developer and a marketer can collaborate on a paper prototype of a website, or they can collaborate on a prototype of a new org structure with their other colleagues. Or add a VC to the mix and they can prototype the financing structure for a business. Invite every part of your organization into rapid prototyping sessions. Each of those perspectives is another chance to learn. And with all those hands working quickly, there are more chances to try things. So you learn faster. Quickly compost your failures and course correct. Rapid prototypes are made of cheap material, so you can make many versions and learn what results a variety of approaches might yield. Or you can build prototypes to test different parts of the solution, like with a works-like prototype and a looks-like prototype. Rapid prototyping doesn't eliminate the need for specific skill sets, though. Experts get to take all the ideas and knowledge from the rapid prototyping sessions and apply them to the careful work they do as they build the market or drop the financing papers. You worked so hard to fill your funnel at the top. Go fast, so you'll have a chance to try everything you can to generate value for the business. Let your whole team rapid prototype and build something great together.
Was a video useful, team, on how do we do prototyping and what is the objective of prototyping? Yes, no? Was it useful? Did you get to understand something? Okay, can you please summarize the key takeaways, one or two key takeaways from this video for me on the chat? What do you learn on prototyping? Build fast, as many prototypes as possible. Multiple attempts on multiple prototypes. Involve the entire team. What else? Build fast. Fail fast to succeed. There are two types of prototypes. What are the two types mentioned in this video, if you recollect? There are two types of prototypes. Anyone remembers the two types mentioned in this particular video? No, not really paper, no, other than Lavanya. Still, there are two types. Anyone else remembers what are the two types of prototypes that he spoke about, the orator? Part of the prototype in the entire. Okay, that's close, Priya. What else? No, that is a rapid prototype. Or both are rapid, because since we're dealing with the context of rapid prototyping. But we have two types of prototypes. One is called the one that looks like the end product, and that one that works like the end product. So suppose I have to prototype a new type of watch. Then I can make two prototypes. One that looks like the end watch, final watch, but doesn't work like a watch. And the second can be the module that works like the watch, but doesn't look anything like a watch. Which means I should not be combining the functionality and the aesthetics into the same prototype. I can have a functionality prototype. I can have an aesthetics prototype. Am I clear on that? Okay, that's a good point, Sandeep. Iconic and analogous. Yeah. But another important question that we need to bear in mind is what to prototype and what not to prototype. Suppose you have 10 ideas. Should you prototype all 10 ideas? Yes, no? Yes, no? Tell me. No? Yes. No. Why? You may not have time. So this is a very insightful video from David and Thomas Kelly of Ideation, where they talk about what exactly one should prototype and what they should not prototype. I find this a very amusing video, though it is in the realm of physical prototype, but they also talk about service prototype. So let me roll the video for all of you so that you can draw some insights from here.
When you have medtech products, it is harder to prototype in one sense, that you can't build the whole thing, right? Because that would be takes too long and too cost effective. But I think some people get the notion that you do have to prototype the whole thing, and you do once, you know, towards the end you do, or because you have to like get approvals and actually prove effectiveness. But I think the thing that I think sometimes people miss is you only have to prototype the unbelievable part, right? If I said I have this new device that, you know, that looks like a table, but it levitates people, well, I wouldn't have to build the table part of it because I know the table. It's the levitation part that you have to actually prototype, right? So I think when we look at medtech products, a lot of times there's stuff that's totally believable that you can do because it exists in the world, right? And so in some ways, if you can be wildly creative about your prototyping and just prototype the most unbelievable part. I wish I could say that a different way. It's but it's the part that you would have to believe that works in order to believe that the whole thing works. Rather than the whole thing, we get wound up in building the whole device rather than just this little part. And the reason is, I think the kind of discussion about prototyping, we start to think of prototyping loss or show investors or something, and while that's nice, the kind of prototyping that I'm really interested in is the kind of prototyping where you're prototyping to answer a question yourself. You're the development team, you're the engineer, or you're the technologist on the product, and you want to prototype something because you don't know the answer. So Prototyping the part where you're asking a question, you have an actual question, is where the real high value prototyping stuff happens to me.
Right, sometimes you do have to prototype to show the boss, but that prototyping for yourself, we call that build to think. That you're expressing things with your hands. In history, the human brain and the human hands co-evolved. As you do this tactile expression in terms of a physical prototype, you learn in the process. And so we do lots of medtech devices, and prototyping is an intrinsic part of the process. We worked several years ago now on a tool for sinus surgery. They go up through your nose and they, drill near your brain. You never want your surgeon to say, oops, like when he's up there doing that. Anyhow, we're working on this very precise medical device. But early on, we were thinking about the structure of the device, how to make the material flow through the tube better and never get stuck and things like that. And we were doing this brainstorm in our Chicago office. And one of our engineers, who wasn't quite satisfied with the discussion at hand, leaves the brainstorming session for 5 minutes, makes the ugliest prototype in the history of IDEO. It was like a whiteboard marker with some scotch tape around it and a little clothespin thing. And he brings it back in and hands it to the person he was sitting next to in the brainstorming session. He says, hey, are you thinking of something like this? And so it was the rough architecture of the product. He said, are you thinking of something like this? And nobody laughed. It was an ugly, ugly prototype. Nobody laughed. But this medical advisor picked up the device and held it very gingerly, because it's a very fragile prototype, and said, yeah, something a little bit like this. And so we made 30 more prototypes before that surgical tool made it to market. But that ugly 5-minute prototype, cost of goods 0, right? That prototype crystallized our thinking and allowed the whole group to move forward to the next step.
Okay, team. I hope this was insightful in terms of telling you what to prototype and what not to prototype. So very quickly, what's your insight from this little video over here? What should you prototype and what you should not? What are your thoughts around it? What should we prototype? Can you write down on the chat? The unbelievable part. Very good, Jagjeevan. You should only prototype the most unbelievable part, because many of the ideas that you would have are so believable that don't waste your time on those. The real leap of faith kind of ideas that are very difficult to discern, very difficult to comprehend, is what you should really focus on. Does it help hearing from the real experts? These are the guys, the older guy, his name is David Kelly. He coined the term design thinking, by the way. The older guy who spoke first. And Thomas Kelly is himself a very accomplished author. He wrote 3 books actually, Art of Innovation, 10 Phases of Innovation, and Creative Confidence. So both are brothers and amazing people. Lovely. Correct, Damodaran. So the ones which have gray area is what your focus should be on prototyping. So now let us see, how do you really prototype? And then I'll open up the discussion where you can share your presentations with me. So this is the product that we're talking about, the case study discussed. So original idea was on the left hand side, $1 prototype, or maybe lesser than $1, and the final product is on the right hand side. But that leap of faith on how you hold it was the critical testing point. And what IDEO says, bringing new ideas to life is an essential part of what we do. The first versions are usually rough. They are really proofs of concept, ways of helping us explore, learn, and think. Usually, they're far from pretty and may never work. They're prototypes, not finished products. So when you go out to any meeting, in IDEO, there is a concept called Boyle's Law. Anyone from the book remembers Boyle's Law? Boyle's Law. Anyone who's read the book Design Your Thinking remembers what is called Boyle's Law of IDEO? Anyone remembers that? Boyle's law? If you don't, you can say no, so that I can tell you the answer. If you know, you can tell the answer, so that at least we can proceed. Okay, so here is Boyle's law. Let me write it down. That's called Boyle's law. Never go to a meeting without a prototype. Okay, so every time you meet a customer or every time you're meeting somebody, don't go with a PPT, go with a prototype of the product, so that at least it's a good conversation starter. So that at least the customer knows that what have you been working on. So next time, even when you are going ahead and meeting with people, it's a good idea to have some rough cut understanding of what the product is going to be, what the solution is going to be, so that the customer, instead of giving an input onto your PPT, is giving input onto your prototype. That's called Boyle's law. Okay, so let me show a prototype that we have, and this is called scenario. The way I have done a prototyping is called scenario based prototyping. So let me show this prototype to all of you. Okay, so you can use scenario as a prototyping methodology, or you can combine scenarios with what we call as a storyboarding. So this is a prototype, simple prototype. See, so I have basically divided the prototype into 3 stages. The first is before internship begins, second stage is during internship, and third is post internship. And all the shortlisted ideas have been put up in a pictorial figure for someone to understand. And this is the story. So once there was a student, story goes like this. Once there was a student who was studying at IIM Rohtak and who was preparing for the internship. While preparing for the internship, the student was working with faculty and industry experts who used to come and teach. At the campus, the course was divided equally into courses taken up by pure academics, researchers, and the industry experts. And the credits for online courses were also considered, so the students are motivated to work on the courses. These courses were reviewed by the alumni committee annually so that they're abreast. And when the internship started, the first thing that the college insisted on was a clear and elaborate job description should be given. Before 1 week before the actual internship starts, there is a 1 week crash course where all the important concepts that the student has learned or that the student might require, the student gets to revise. And they also get to understudy with the teachers. So this is before the internship. Now when the internship starts, the first week of the student goes through a virtual walkthrough of the entire process. The video interviews from previous interns offer them insights on what to expect, what not to expect. And the very first week, the schedule of the entire 2 months is given. If the student still has some questions, he or she can go to a portal asking queries, and the student gets to sit through conference calls, meetings with the customers to get a big picture view. Instead of working on himself or herself, the student is assigned to a team where they have team oriented activities and setting. There is a weekly sync up that happens with the mentor. The mentor is measured in terms of mentoring programs. The mentor is also coached by the company, and the best mentors get the nomination for the best mentorship, so the mentor has a skin in the game. Once the internship is over and the student is back to the college, you tend to document all your ideas and you can give a rating to the mentor, so that the college and the institution where the student did the internship can look at improving the experience of the future students as they go along. That's it. So you break this entire thing into a beautiful journey which peppers your ideas and tells that how the new thing or the new internship program is going to look like. So all the ideas are written in the form of a storyboard or a script. Now tell me folks, slide number 21, which is this slide, C, B, A. Which of these ideas, these are also ideas, same ideas, this is A, same ideas B, and same ideas C. A, B, C. Ideas are exactly the same, by the way. Which of the three makes more sense, A, B, or C, representation wise? Why C makes more sense? And why C? Correct? So C is where the virtual thinking or the visual thinking of design thinking comes in. So we always maintain that design thinking is visual thinking. And trust me, when you will do it yourself on your project, you would realize that while converting your ideas into this format, you will get a tremendous amount of clarity yourself on what works and what does not work, isn't it? Because when you try to convert and visualize your own ideas, you would start evaluating the ideas in your mind. Now, when you go with this figure to your stakeholders, they'll be able to give you much better inputs, whether this will work or not. Am I right? Instead of going them with 100 ideas or even going there with 30 ideas, if you go to them with one slide, this is the slide, okay? So you have compressed entire 5 days of design thinking workshop into one single slide. That's your final story. And if you go to your stakeholders with this final story, they'll be far more likely to give feedback to you. Does it make sense to you that why this is a very important step of design thinking? So this is titled as the future of MBA internship. You can have any lovely title, any fancy title, that is up to your imagination. But the idea is never go to a meeting without a prototype. Never go with an idea. They'll shoot your idea. Never go with a plan. They'll shoot the plan. Always go with a prototype. Okay, sir, this is what I think. What do you say? This is the mental makeup of the new intern. So if Anand is working on the SOP thing, go with the final draft of with this SOP implemented. These are the ideas that I have in mind. This is how these ideas will look in reality. What do you say? Show the big picture to your audience, show the ultimate picture to your audience, and then they will be able to give you correction. Am I with you on this, guys? Is it useful, this exercise? So let me quickly take you to the very beginning, okay, so that we are all on the same page. So the first thing is your design brief. Yes. The second thing is empathizing, problem exploration map, stakeholder map, journey map, empathy map, and buyer persona or user persona. Yes. Then the problem canvas, the 5 problem statements, then the 5 ideation methods, challenging assumptions, ideation triggers, across the value chain, analogous design, and design for the extreme. Then you get into shortlisting of ideas. You reduce it to 1/3 and you put the ideas against each problem statement. Then you collapse these ideas into a impact time matrix and map it basis the impact they result and the time they take. This is your impact time matrix. And then you start putting these ideas in the form of a narrative or a storyboard. And this is a very creative exercise. And this is how your final narrative would look like. And when you start your presentation, you always start your presentation from slide number 21. Okay. The first slide of your presentation should be slide number 21. Your last slide in the workshop should be the first slide of your presentation. Does it make sense? Let me write it down. Please take a note. The last slide of your presentation, of your workshop or your project, should be the first slide. Does it make sense? Sure, Michael, I'll come to that. Are you all clear with this statement? The last slide of your project should be the first slide of your presentation. You always start with this slide because this is the most important slide for the customer to see. They want to know the ideas. They don't want to know the effort. Often we spend so much of a time in the effort that we forget about the idea. Okay. Now to Michael's question. So Michael, if you see, I have given timelines here. Starters means 3 to 6 months of implementation time. Stars means 9 to 12 months of implementation time. Pipeline is about 1 to 2 years, and pipe dreams is 2 years and out, perhaps. So what we try and do is that we intuitively segregate all the ideas basis the time they will take to implement and the impact they would result into. Does it make sense, Michael? So this is intuitive exercise. Okay, Vinani, to your question, you pick those 5 problem statements from all the maps, including the customer journey map. And yes, you identify the biggest pain points.
Pawan,
yes.
Usually, Pawan, can I speak? I got one question on this. See, usually what happens in the impact time matrix, when the stakeholders reviews this one, the first thing he looks into is any idea he will review in 3 things as a stakeholder. Impact, then he will look at investment and investigation. Like talking about investigation means risk. What is the risk involved into it? And that is exactly what MD or CEO will be looking any of the ideas. Second part, he will be looking into it. Is what is the classification of these ideas? Because there are certain ideas it is in your scope, certain ideas is in certain categories like high impact and high. It's very difficult to implement that project. That requires a different mindset. Because the person who is doing this, he may not be able to understand, because it's whether all the ideas, whether he could be able to implement, or because it has to be told very clearly during the stakeholders interaction. That's what the feedback comes to us whenever we present. It should be told very clearly to us what support means. You have to communicate your ideas in 3 things: impact, investigation. Impact means what is the idea is going to impact, how big is this, so you can come to know how closer is to your aspiration. Investment, how much do I have to invest? Third, how much is the investigation? Investigation means risk involved into it. Because here the stakeholder is going to take the risk.
Absolutely.
You are going to propose to them. So
yeah, absolutely. So
yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so if you remember, some of the dimensions we already captured in this filter. If you look at the risk involved, both business risk and technology risk, we've covered in the filter of technical feasibility and business viability. So once I take my ideas through this filter of viability, desirability, feasibility, only then I map them in that 2x2 matrix. So if the idea does not even qualify here because it of a very high risk, the idea does not go to that stage. Secondly, I could have made it into a 3-dimensional matrix also, but that would have made this thing more complex. So basis the requirement of the specific company, you can add multiple filters, but at the very prima facie, these are the 2 dominant filters to look at: the time it takes to realize the results and the results that you get. And basis the requirement of the company, you can add more filters. That's absolutely okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Sure. No worries. So yeah, so Asha, the x-axis is the timeline. You see, this is before internship, during internship, and post internship. So intuitively, the x-axis is the timeline. Does it help, Asha?
Yeah, so I was just asking on this slide, on the pictorial slide, about the timelines. Is it mentioned here, or it's okay if we just keep the
no, it is intuitive
ideas out?
Since
it's intuitive. Okay. Fine.
So most of these ideas are in the starters and star category. Most of them are in starters and stars category. So only these 2 you prototype. So you don't prototype the pipeline and pipe dream.
Okay,
Okay, so Michael, to your question again, it says, no worries. So Michael, to your question, the Venn diagram which we had on desirability, feasibility, viability, we use that to come up to the 2x2 matrix. So Michael, the thing is, you cannot take all the 100 ideas through prototyping. That's not practical. Suppose in the ideation stage, you have 100 ideas. You can't take 100 ideas to prototyping because we need to prototype the most complex ideas. But there are certain ideas which on the face of it itself looks that they are not desirable to the end customer, or they may not be practical. So those obvious ones we need to drop so that we can come up with a more manageable number. Otherwise, if you start prototyping each and every idea, then that will end up becoming a very costly affair. Does it make sense, Michael? Okay, now I would like to offer you something, but only if you're interested in it. Since we have time, would you like to learn how to do business storytelling? Suppose you have 2 minutes to give an executive pitch to a very busy CEO. How will you tell your entire narrative in that 2 minutes to the busy CEO? Would that interest you? This is called the elevator pitch. The art of elevator pitch. Okay, lovely. So which company do you think, in your own reading experience or otherwise, which company or which set of companies do you think have mastered elevator pitch, the concept of elevator pitch? What companies comes to your mind? Apple, okay. Any other thought? Raja says Apple. Any other ideas on beyond Apple? Microsoft? Budweiser. How Budweiser, Lavanya? I'm just curious.
I've not heard their business pitches, but ideally their ad itself is like a business pitch, right? It's very short, succinct, to the point, and it gains a lot of attention.
This bud is for you. Okay. All right, I won't argue there. This is good. So the company which I learned from the elevator pitch is a company by the name McKinsey and Company. So in fact, they are some of the pioneers in the space of elevator pitches. So what's an elevator pitch? Let us understand that. Suppose McKinsey is hired by a client for a 6 months engagement. So, in those 6 months, the folks at McKinsey work incessantly, tirelessly on coming up with a grand strategy for the organization, and they present their final proposal and recommendations in what they call as a blue book. So blue book is their recommendation book, and they have to make a final pitch and presentation to the CEO of the company. So CEO of the company and the direct reports of the CEO are assembled in the CEO's conference room on the 11th floor of a office, and they're all ready. The presentation is ready, everything is spick and span, and in comes the CEO. But the CEO is looking very disturbed on that particular day, so he's in a hurry and he rushes into the room and he says, okay guys, what, we have got an urgent issue to handle because we have got a lawsuit, but unfortunately I can't attend this meeting and I'll have to straight away go to my lawyer. Everybody's upset about it, but the guy who's supposed to make the presentation, the client engagement manager from McKinsey, says that, sir, can I have a word with you? He says, no, I'm in real hurry. However, you can accompany me to my parking spot, which is in the basement on the elevator. Now, the pitch which you make in the elevator is called as the elevator pitch. Now, obviously, you can't carry your laptop in the elevator. You can't have an elaborate presentation. All you need to do is a narrative. And this narrative is what McKinsey and Company calls as the SCQA model. Okay, this is called the pyramid principle. It's a very, very powerful model, extremely powerful model. And I would teach you that, and I would like you to master it. Okay. All right, so let's do that. This is called the SCQA model. It's a very powerful model. So here is your SCQA model. So what does SCQA stand for? SCQA stands for situation, complication, question, and answer. Simple. Situation, complication, question, and answer. So the first thing is situation. Always appraise your audience with the current situation. Never assume that the customer knows what the problem is. Always start from the assumption that the customer needs to be educated about the problem or educated about the context so that you draw the customer's attention. Then comes the complication. Complication is a spanner which you throw that, hey, the current situation has become sour because of a complication which needs your attention. And that's where this presentation is. Then comes the fundamental question that we have, and eventually we have the answer. For example, suppose I have to take up the project of Anand, or let's say Antara. Okay, what's the situation? The situation is, so if Antara has to speak to the CEO of MCure, this is how the conversation would look like. Hi, so every year we send about 30 of our top performers to various training programs and conferences across the country. We spend a lot of our time, effort, and opportunity cost in sending them, and we really hope that they come back and they share their learning with the rest of the organization. However, so that's a situation. So that the CEO knows, okay, we sent 30 people, which is a big investment, right? Then comes the complication. However, we have realized that when these people come back from these workshops, training programs, and conferences, only 2 out of 30 really put an effort of sharing their learning with the other people in their team or the organization in a systematic manner, which means that a lot of our investment is not resulting into the larger good. That's the complication. Now the CEO is alert about a problem, because at the CEO level, he may not even be aware about the problem, right? Because he is dealing with a lot of other things. Now the question that we have is this. The question we have is, what kind of a mechanism should we bring in place that every person who ever attends a program or a training program outside of MCure should be self-motivated to share his or her learning with his team and the larger organization? That's the question. Now, I went through a 5-day design thinking program organized by NHRD, and through that investigation and application of design thinking, I have come up with 3 proposals. Now, proposal number 1 is, let us have reward points for the people who actively share their learnings with others in the team. Proposal number 2 is that there should be a feedback mechanism where others should rate somebody in terms of knowledge which has been gained and the knowledge which has been shared. And third thing is that we need to document that knowledge so that the dependency is not on that one person and that knowledge is captured. For that, we would need some funding, but for that, I can always talk to you at a later point in time. All the best for your meeting. That's it. So in total, it took me just about 2.5 minutes to give that pitch. And that's all it's required. Let us take another example. Okay. The example is for the Tanishq team. The Tanishq team, which is looking at, reduction of that card, the paper card, which has the list of all the items. Okay. So what's the situation? Situation is, every year we spend close to 15 lakh rupees just on printing the paper. That is a one-time usage of paper that goes with all the jewelry that gets assembled in our assembly line. That's the situation. So Mr. Venkat, who is the CEO of Titan, gets to know that, okay, we spent 15 lakh rupees. Okay, that's the situation. So that's fine. I know that. Okay, because Venkat comes from Tanishq. Then comes the complication. The complication is that this 15 lakh rupees of investment is an absolute waste, because that paper is not reusable. And we are not able to think about a better way, because it can have errors. We are wasting paper, we are wasting money, we are wasting ink, and we are just sticking to the old ways. Now, the question that we are trying to address with the design thinking workshop is, can we come up with a better way of communicating the same information down the assembly line to the various stations in a paperless fashion, or at least can we reduce the amount of paper that is being consumed? Now, basis our design thinking workshop, we did a brainstorming session and we came up with the following three proposals. Proposal number one, because everybody is using a smartphone these days, why not use a QR code instead of a paper? And the QR code can be updated, doesn't have any lot of paper, and it is highly accurate. That's number one. Number two, instead of using paper, can we use some signs and color coding, like how end-on works in the assembly line? That's the point number two. And point number three, can we have some artificial intelligence based announcements and cues, like how Mumbai Dabbawalas use it instead of having those papers? Now, these are the three ideas that we have, and we have a lot more, but I think we can discuss this when you give us a time at a later point. Thank you very much. That's it. So without using any presentation, what you have done is you have communicated the gravity of the problem, the question that you're trying to answer, and your top three solutions to the audience in a matter of 2 minutes. Does it make sense to you guys? SCQA model? Yes, no? I've given two examples from our workshop on how you can communicate with your senior most leader in under 2 minutes. Make sense? Okay. Always be ready to make a 2-minute communication with anybody without a PPT. That is your real strength, because people will get bored with your PowerPoint presentation, right? 2-minute conversation. For example, Michael. Suppose Michael meets Rishad Premji. Rishad Premji is the chairman of Wipro currently. Suppose Michael meets Rishad Premji at a cafe coffee day at Wipro, and Michael has just 2 minutes with Rishad Premji. So this is how Michael will go about. Hey Rishad, glad to meet you. So I represent the knowledge management function in the consulting domain. And as you know, consulting is a very, very critical aspect of of any consulting business, because consultants live and die by their knowledge and the knowledge sharing. Now we have such a strong, so that's the situation. We have a strong consulting practice at Wipro, which is about 2,000 people, and they generate a lot of knowledge with every single engagement that they have. That's the situation. However, now Michael slips into the complication. However, we have realized that only 10% of all the consultants at Wipro Technologies actively share knowledge, and even a lesser amount of people actively seek that knowledge because they often prefer working in their fiefdoms. And this is not really helping us leverage the larger knowledge ecosystem that our consulting practice has managed to build over the years. So the question that I want to address is, how do I motivate the consultants at Wipro Technologies to actively participate in knowledge sharing and make knowledge sharing a way of their life without getting intimidated or without being pushed? Basis a 5-day design thinking workshop, the answers that we come up with are as follows. Number one, can we come up with a portal where we can give scores to people in terms of their contribution, much like how Kaggle does it or how SAP does it, and showcase the biggest contributors? Number two, can we write case studies and papers which will help people and consultants really shorten their time to performance on various projects so that they don't reinvent the wheel? And number three, can we invite guest speakers from other consulting companies so that they share the power of knowledge management? Thank you so much for your time. I would like to fix up another appointment with you at some time later to discuss these points in detail. Take care. That's it. That's all Michael has to do in that 2 minute with Rishad Premji. So the point is, you need to capture, CXOs are busy people, when they're talking to you, they're thinking of 10 other things. So to even get 2 minutes of their attention, it's a premium time. So don't waste your time by taking them through the PPT. Okay, don't tell them 10 ideas, tell them 3 ideas. If not 3, 1 idea, but hook them. Sell the problem before you sell the solution. Okay, let me give you an example with respect to the I Am Rohtak case study. Okay, and this is the video for all of you to understand. The book is a very brilliant book written by Barbara Minto. Barbara Minto was the first female principal at McKinsey. McKinsey was notoriously infamous for not having female employees for a very long time. Black was out of question. McKinsey only had white American Caucasians for a longest time, but she broke the glass ceiling literally, and she wrote this brilliant book called The Pyramid Principle, which I'm reading currently. And this is an amazing video that talks about the way in which you deliver your executive communication in 2 minutes.
You need to tell a story in order to succeed. It's how you'll convince others to take action, like purchasing your product or investing in your company. Communicating that story, whether it's in a press release, a pitch deck, or web copy, is hard. Jumpstart your storytelling with simple structures that have long histories of success. If you need to convince a strongly analytical audience, turn to Barbara Minto. She spent the last 30 years teaching her pyramid principle to business professionals. It's a framework that helps you make your argument very appealing to a rational thinker. Begin by outlining the situation, that's the state of affairs, the complication, what is changing to make things harder, the question, what your situation and complication are asking, and the answer, your particularly ingenious solution. With your answer stated, you spend the majority of your time offering arguments, sub-arguments, and evidence in service of that answer. See, it's a pyramid, and it's going to help you. First, the pyramid makes your answer the most important thing in the room. Instead of giving a long summary of the status quo or the challenge, you talk about the solution. Next, the pyramid creates coherence. Each level of the pyramid supports the level above it. Evidence explicitly supports an argument. Arguments explicitly support an answer. If they don't, find better arguments. Finally, the pyramid helps you pair unnecessary information. Too many presentations and stories are filled with information intended to show that a lot of work was done, that every possible facet of a topic has been explored. With the pyramid, if it doesn't support the answer, it's gone. This isn't grade school. No points for completeness. If you're telling your story to the kind of person that loves spreadsheets, tell it this way. It will help them fall in love with you. How much do we like it? We structured this video using it. Thank you, Barbara Minto, for helping us be
The book is called
understood.
The Pyramid Principle. It's on the right-hand side, Sandeep, on the same screen. And the whole idea is, how do you really crack a conversation using the SCQA model? Okay, so here is how you do SCQA model. Let me quickly tell you using the same case study that we had here. So, was it useful, by the way, the video and the concept of SCQA? You can read the book, of course, but in the absence of reading the book, at least you can get cracking on the concept. It's a useful concept nonetheless. So, let us understand how this concept really works. Communicating without PPT is a skill that all of us should try and develop. So the first thing is situation. Second is complication. Third is question. And the fourth is answer. First is situation. Situation is every year, hundreds of MBA students go for a 2 months internship program, expecting to learn about real world problems and solutions. What's the complication? However, very few students get to learn tangible skills and make a real contribution to the corporate and their own selves, their career, through the internship. Okay, that's the complication. Question. The question is, how might we design a better MBA internship experience for better internship experience that is a win-win for both students and corporate? That's a question. Based on the design thinking, we have come up with 3 answers. The first answer is institute. 3 answers. The first is institute to encourage self-study by the student about the role and company. Second is well-structured mentor-mentee programs at corporate. And third is timely and detailed feedback to corporate about the student internship experience. That's it. If you want to know more, we can always have a detailed conversation. That's all. So what we have done here is, in a very short frame, we have sort of got our audience up to speed. That's it. That is what we tend to do in our simple SCQA model. Does it make sense to you, team? How SCQA works and why it is a very elegant way. So this is a story. Okay, and this is typically your slide number 1. You always start with a story. Then you go through the motion. So if I have to really make my presentation, then my first slide will be slide 22. My second slide will be slide 21. My third slide will be my design brief. So this is how I will have my presentation. Let me just put it all for you. So this is how I'll do it. This is actually my first slide. This is my second slide. Okay. This is so myself, my story, my brief, design brief, my final model. That's it. That's the end of the presentation. If this person wants to go any detail, then I go through the motion. All of this is behind the scenes. The customer doesn't want to know all the effort that you put in. The customer wants to know the end result. So always start your presentation with the first thing, which is the elevator pitch. Okay. So here's the elevator pitch. SQA. Situation, complication, question, answer. That's my first slide always. I always start with the elevator pitch. So elevator pitch really helps me get my audience attention crisply. My top ideas on the right hand side. Okay. And then I'm sending this presentation to you shortly, my design brief. And then finally, my long list of ideas, and then my presentation. This is what you need to. So I wanted to start practicing how to go about storytelling techniques, situation, complication, question, and answer. Does it make sense to all of you guys? Yes, no? It'll be very useful. Trust me, it'll be very, very useful technique because you will be learning a very new skill on executive communication, which is very fundamental skill for anybody. And then highly work. So never show your effort to your client. Always show your results to your client. You often do that mistake that we tell them all the boiling of the ocean which you have done, but the customer doesn't give a damn about what effort you put. The customer cares about what is the outcome that you are trying to demonstrate to the end result. Okay, results matter, absolutely, Francis. And communicating of the results is as important as the results themselves are. Lovely. So we're at the last 10 minutes of the session. Now what I would request all of you to do is, of course, please send me your presentations over the week if you want feedback from me. And this is for your good. I know this is over and above your day's job, but I think since you signed up for the workshop, you realize that if you share this material with me, you will be net beneficiary from this entire engagement. So please do take time. I'm sending all the material to you today, which I have taken you through. Okay. Yeah, and that will be very, let me show you a very simple example of the SCQA model being applied in practice. Okay. Very simple example of SCQA being applied in practice. This is another way of rapid prototyping, if you can think of it. Here is SEQM model in practice. Okay.
You've been there. You're about to buy lunch and realize your wallet is in your other pants. Or maybe you left your keys at home. The problem is organization. You need one place for everything, like a magic pocket. Putting something in the magic pocket means it's always there, no matter what you wear or where you are. The same thing is true for computers. If you have more than one, keeping track of all of your files can be a pain. Solving this problem is one of the big ideas behind Dropbox. It's like a magic pocket, a single, secure place for all of your stuff. Let's meet Josh, who is preparing for a big trip to Africa. Right now, all of his trip info is spread across his laptop, desktop, and phone. He needs to consolidate it all and is tired of having to email files to himself or move them around with a USB drive. Then he found Dropbox, which creates a new kind of folder on his computers. These folders work hard to be exactly alike, even across Macs and PCs. By adding his itinerary to his laptop Dropbox, he can be sure the same file will show up in his desktop Dropbox and even on his phone. The same thing happens when he saves a document in a Dropbox folder. The document gets updated across all of his Dropboxes. But it's not just his computers. The Dropbox website also works to be exactly like his other Dropboxes. Anything he puts in Dropbox is available on the website automatically. This way, if his Jeep takes a dive and his computer is ruined, he can still get to his files on the Dropbox website, where they're always backed up. As it turns out, Josh's Safari was a success, and his laptop made it home with lots of videos and photos to share. Instead of emailing everything, he just shared a Dropbox folder with his mom, so she could get copies of photos she wants to frame. Because it worked so well for travel, Josh made Dropbox the home for all of his stuff, so it's accessible anytime, wherever he goes. Whether you're traveling the world, running a business, or simply organizing your life, Dropbox means you can stop worrying about managing files and backups and get on with your next adventure. You can download
Okay, guys. So this was an example of SEQA, correct? Yes? So let us start by the situation. What's the situation here which has been narrated? If you go back to the story, this is called storytelling. What's the situation narrated in the story of Dropbox? Do you remember the situation? It was a very beautifully situation, complication, question and answer in this very simple narrative. Situation was? Yeah, so you have multiple files, you are managing those files. Complication. Suppose your laptop gets lost, your phone gets lost. That's a complication. The question, how do you have a secure backup at all times? Answer, Dropbox. Dropbox came right at the end, right? They never started with Dropbox. Here is Dropbox, which is going to solve all your problems. No, because the customer does not know what is Dropbox. Dropbox is such a new concept. Storage on cloud is such a radical concept that to sell the concept, I have to sell the problem first. To sell the problem, I have to sell the situation first. Correct? And that's why the answer comes last. Very often, the way we make our presentations, our answers comes at the start. Here is Dropbox. Never start with the answer. Always start with the situation. It's like extremely good storytelling. Hook the customer with the situation and the complication, and then finally comes the question and the answer. Is it a useful video, team? What do you say? So you can use anything to model your idea. You can use a storyboard, storytelling, script, cartoon character, anything completely up to your imagination. But the idea is sell the problem before you sell the solution. I can never overemphasize on that. All right, lovely. So in the last 9 minutes with us, and in the last 9 minutes, what I would expect from you is your feedback. So what have you learned today, guys? Tell me. In today's session, what has been your key learning? Please write down on the chat. Your key learning from the session today. SCQA, distilling ideas, very nice. SCQA is such an amazing principle that, I mean, I would want to read the book, Barbara Minto. Storytelling, elevator pitch, distilling ideas, prototyping, art of storytelling. Sell the problem first. I'm very happy. See, it's a Saturday. It's a premium time. You're taking time away from your family, from your personal life, and we need to ensure that this time has a lot of value for you. So it's my responsibility, at least, that you should not be shortchanged. Analogous design. Good point, Kashmira. All right, good. Boyle's law, yeah. It's Boyles, Boyle's law. Good. If anyone has a question for me, you can ask me a question right now, or else we can call it a day. Avindai Hospital, good. I'll send the video link to all the videos which I've shared today. I'll send the presentations to you so that you can use those presentations effectively. Okay. So this one-on-one, Michael, you can just write an email to me. We'll fix up a time mutually and we can get into a conversation. You can do that anytime till 30th of March. So I'll give 30 minutes to each team to have a discussion. So please avail it. It's a very good opportunity. You don't get these chances every other day. So try to make the most out of the chance which has been given to you. Any technique while reading book? So I don't read books very fast, first of all. I'm a slow reader, okay, but I read for long durations of time, so that's always useful to me. Plus, I always read a book with a pen in my hand, so I write voraciously on the margins of the book. I underline wherever it is relevant. And lastly, I read a book with the objective of teaching it to somebody. And that's how I ensure that I'm retaining a lot of what I've read in the book. So read not for yourself, but read for others so that you can teach others. So Asif, that has been my approach for reading. I hope that is useful. Good. All right then, guys. I think that's it for us today in terms of the time. Or you can start implementing, Michael, a project, and that is what will give you the confidence to coach others. So do this project very well, read about it, write about it, and then people should be coming to you for seeking your inputs and coaching help. Okay, team. So that's about it. So thank you so much for joining me today also. And I'll see you in the next Saturday for the last leg of our discussion. Please work on your presentations and reach out to me for any guidance that you may need from my end. I'll be very, very happy to assist you. Take care and have a good weekend and be in touch. Bye.